Man, oh man, I am super excited to finally be able to review this series. If you're clicking this link, you probably already know, so I'm not trying to build up hype for it or anything. But this was a series when I started doing Anime Streaming Showcase that I never ever expected or thought that I would be able to review without simply saying, you'll have to go steal this because there is no way legally to ever get your hands on this series. But I am finally able to talk about G Gundam, and I am so goddamn excited. So let's just hop right into our review, alright? So in the short time that I've been doing this series, I've really handled more recent series. I think maybe 10 years as far back as I've gone. But with this, we're reaching 20 years into the past. We're going far into the asphalt to discuss the greatest, most over-the-top Gundam series ever, Mobile Fighter G Gundam. And this series happily spits on the entire Gundam franchise with a gloomy smirk, all while presenting some of the most bizarre Gundam frames and absolutely absurd battles. It's a sprawling journey mixed with old and new allies coming together to defeat old and new enemies, all of whom are constantly changing allegiances and alliances. G Gundam is so goddamn 90s, it hurts. In a good way. G Gundam is set in the future century timeline of the Gundam franchise, and all that really means for newcomers is that it's a one-off alternate universe that doesn't factor into the Gundam franchise's universal century where most of the canon lives in the Gundam series. Planet Earth is completely devastated, it's mostly inhabitable, but there are established colonies literally in space that correspond to various countries around the world. You've got your United States, you've got Germany, you've got Russia, and you've got Japan. And they all have the perfectly 90s idea of Neo pushed in front of them. So you have Neo Japan, Neo United States, Neo Germany, Neo Russia, all that fun stuff to make it really 90s. And every 4 years, they have what's called the Gundam fight, which a representative from each colony will battle in the country's respective frame to literally control the goddamn galaxy. Like, I'm not, like, that's so, that's happening. That's what G Gundam is all about. It pits colony against colony, and the winner's home colony becomes determined the ruler of Earth for 4 years until it all starts over again. And this particular series takes place in the 13th Gundam fight, meaning there's been 12 more of these things before we even get involved. It's so silly. But honestly, if presidential elections were handled this way versus democracy, I'd probably care more about politics than I really should. The Gundam fight is a sincere contest, and it has strict rules and guidelines that entrants must follow. Everything from keeping battles to one-on-one to allowing direct attacks on the pilot is amended to allow a clear winner. Our protagonist of G Gundam is Neo Japan's Domon Kashu, who is really just looking for his brother Kyoji, who's missing. He's been blackmailed by the Neo Japan government to pilot their Gundam for the Gundam fight by holding their father hostage in cryogenic sleep for building the ultimate Gundam, but then allowing it to be stolen. So Domon, who simply just wants to reunite his family, is figuratively held at gunpoint to fight for his colony through most of G Gundam. So that's kind of why he's a dick through most of the series. He's not super keen on helping others, and he just wants to know where his brother is. Most people he runs into, he holds up a picture and is like, hey, have you seen this guy? Do you know where this guy is? Can you lead me to him, please? He's not unjustified in his plight, but he's presented as a selfish character for the bulk of the series. Meanwhile, his mechanic, Rain Nikamura, often brings him back from the brink of being a total asshat. Domon and Rain's relationship is as obvious as you would expect in a series like this, but the treatment she endures and is susceptible to while traveling with Domon makes me feel that she really should have looked elsewhere for a lover. The cast of characters continues to grow significantly as the series progresses, as Domon and Rain work their way through the Gundam fight. They gather comrades from the various other colonies, but more importantly the candidates of Neo-China, Neo-Russia, Neo-America, and Neo-France, to eventually form the Shuffle Alliance, a proverbial super team that assists Domon's journey to find his brother Kyoji. Despite the ludicrousness already discussed, G Gundam does feature one of my all-time favorite, most entertaining characters I've ever come across in my time with anime, Master Asia. Master Asia is quite figuratively the greatest Gundam character, possibly one of the greatest anime characters ever created. He figuratively steals any scene that he is in once he's introduced, and he completely breaks the show in any sort of dramatic fashion. If there's any sort of melodrama or heavy-handedness, Master Asia ultimately will show up and say, "This is stupid, realize what we are doing, and just have some fun." That's essentially what Master Asia is there for. He's so nonsensically strong that he will literally defeat Gundams with a goddamn scarf in his first on-screen appearance. He doesn't even use a Gundam. He just shows up, whips out his scarf, and it's essentially like when you remember when you wet a towel and you snap it against someone? It's like that. That's what Master Asia is doing to these fucking metallic robot monsters that are fighting each other. It's so nuts. And Master Asia and Domon's master-student motif and hierarchy is so damned charming, and it's commendable. They're basically best friends. Master Asia is the greatest Gundam character ever created, and his legacy is one that has stuck with me for 20 years. Like, that's how incredible this character is. Now, as to why G Gundam even exists, it's almost a typical anime. It's a soulless attempt to make money. Yes, obviously all anime aims to be profitable and sell merchandise and prolong the brand, but Sunrise were specifically asked by sponsors to make a product less realistic and less serious drama robots in order to push toy sales. Now, Sunrise thankfully were able to create something that would seem soulless when reading about it in a vague synopsis, but would have heart and personality and most importantly a soul that more than touched upon the dedicated demographic that would ultimately respect it. Director Yasuhiro Imagawa, who's familiar with other Gundam series and other real robot series, but would also later be a screenwriter for one of my other all-time favorite series, the 1997 Berserk. So good. He realized that this Gundam would be unlike any Gundams that's come before it, so he aimed to inject it and create a universe that stood on its own and had a personality all at its own. He's said that he's very proud of G Gundam's final product, and he stands by it. But despite all of this, if you go into Gundam expecting a silly, lighthearted / campy robots fighting other robots to save the destroyed planet Earth that heavily borrows from Dragon Ball, that's what you'll get. G Gundam is silly at its root. It has a story, it has a purpose, it has a goal. But it's so silly. It never takes itself too serious. Like, it is full of melodrama, and it has these moments that want to evoke an emotion, but it's never gonna reach that. It was never intended to do that 20 years ago. It's definitely not gonna do that now. It's simply a silly show for the sake of being silly at this point. But it's winking at the audience, but when it was being made, the wink wasn't even implied, but that's how they've ultimately presented this series. G Gundam follows a typical episodic structure for the most part, with most episodes featuring Domon stumbling across an issue or a character, and ultimately leads him into battling another gigantic Gundam to save the day. The stories and the repetitive setups do hurt the overall lasting appeal of the G Gundam story, but the creativity of every element's designs are the high point. Various nations' Gundams are so stereotypical, some possibly to a questionable, potentially offensive degree, but there's just something about seeing a Gundam from Neo-Norway arriving on a gigantic Viking ship, or the Neo-India's Cobra Gundam with a giant Cobra hood. It's insane. It continues the charming design the series never hesitated to put to the forefront and cranks it to about an 11. Rather than continue the stone-faced, overly dramatic storytelling previous Gundam series at this point had told, G Gundam went profoundly melodramatic, but still found a self-effacing element to its story. G Gundam never takes itself seriously, as I've already said, and despite literally being created to save face for the franchise and make a buck at the same time, it's created a legacy for 2 decades now. Before it was ever widely available, thanks to Crunchyroll recently getting licensed to it, G Gundam was a series that was often talked about and was often one of the more Gundam series that most Americans grew up with in the 90s and the early aughts. This and Gundam Wing, but thanks to the programming block Toonami from the mid-90s, G Gundam found a new audience in the 2000s, and Toonami brought it to US viewers. Your mileage may vary when it comes to G Gundam, especially if you never grew up with it and you're not looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. But if you don't mind a campy, mostly mindless tale wrapped around giant robots fighting for galactic dominance, do yourself a favor and give it a go. After 20 years, the plot is quite predictable and shallow at times, but the end game is as enjoyable now as it was when I first experienced it nearly 15 years ago. My only forewarning towards G Gundam is that Crunchyroll only has the subbed Japanese version. There is no English dub available legally. Wink. And it's a shame. The subbed version will be way more on the nose and accurate to the Japanese script, but a lot of the charm for G Gundam, especially for me and most other people that grew up with it on Toonami, was its English dubbing. And I'm not implying that it's bad, and I'm not saying that it is perfect. But for its time, it was a really excellent dubbing, considering the other apex at that point was Dragon Ball, and Funimation had nailed dubbing at that point. But hearing Domon shouting "Shining Finger" in English, or Master Asia and Domon yelling at one another when they finally meet up again, it's just not the same without the English dubbing. That's part of its charm, but it's a minor personal preference. But I think a lot is missed without it, and I can only hope that we receive an anniversary re-release in the coming years, or something. Holy shit, G Gundam is amazing. In my words and my texts, however you're reading or viewing this, will never be enough. And as I said, I am looking through this series with rose-tinted glasses. I know that it's not a great series in terms of, would you watch this over Full Metal Alchemist? Fuck no! I would watch Full Metal Alchemist any day over G Gundam. But if I need something sort of mindless and I just want to watch stupid robots punch another stupid robot, I'm going to go with G Gundam. So anyway, I've gushed enough about this. So check it out. Crunchyroll's got the entire series. And if you are keen on trying to find the English dub, it exists if you know where to look. But as always, thanks so much to the Laser Time guys for giving me the avenue to do this. I'm on vacation as we do this, as this is going up. So I'm relaxing, and I'm just so happy I finally got to review G Gundam, and look forward to a new episode of Anime Stream Showcase next time. See ya.